Yeah, so my tours start at a little Amish business in Volant called the Quilt Shop, Byler's Quilt Shop. I have an SUV, so I take people in my car, and all my tours are private. It's a 2-hour tour. The first part of the tour is we drive all through the back roads of Amish country, and I teach people all about the Amish culture. It's a wonderful learning tour. And then the second part of my tour is we stop at little Amish farms and businesses. So I introduce my tour guests to my Amish friends and families, and then let them shop at their little businesses. So we go to an Amish greenhouse, a bakery, a furniture maker, a produce stand, the quilt shop. So we do lots of fun things on the tour.
That sounds really nice. So you really have a lot of insight because you have a good relationship with all these owners, essentially.
I do. It's been amazing. I tell people on my tour this a lot, that the Amish ordinarily do not let very many outsiders into their world. But by the grace of God, they've allowed me to come in and truly get to know them and love on them. And they've given me so much love in return. But I have formed a very close, intimate relationship with the Amish people of Lawrence County.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about the Amish. Like, how did they get here in Lawrence?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Amish, because it really fits in with how they got to Lawrence County. So the Amish are a group of people that come from Switzerland. Many people think it's Germany, but really it's Switzerland. They're a group of people that originally were called the Anabaptists. See, Amish, that's a way of life. The religion is Anabaptist, and Anabaptist means adult baptism. So the Anabaptists broke away from the Roman Catholic Church in the 1500s, and they had 5 main beliefs that were very different than the Roman Catholics, especially in the 1500s. So they believe in being baptized as an adult, not an infant, like the Roman Catholics believed. They're separatists. They believe in a Bible verse that says to live in this world, but not of this world. They're pacifists. They would never, ever harm another human being, no matter what the circumstance. They believe in living a very humble and simple life, truly following in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, our Savior. And like Jesus was, most Amish are carpenters and woodworkers, furniture makers, cabinet makers, farmers, laborers, anything really working with their hands. And then the 5th belief has to do with shunning. Well, those beliefs were so radical back in those days that the Anabaptists were put to death. They were tortured and persecuted, even beheaded for their beliefs. So they had to flee Switzerland. So during this time of persecution, they split into 4 separate groups. They became the Hutterites. The Hutterites moved to Canada, mostly and out west in the United States. They became the Brethren. Most of the Brethren stayed in Europe and still live all throughout Europe today. The 3rd and largest group to come from that Anabaptist movement are the Mennonites. You've probably heard of the Mennonites. The Mennonites live all over the world. And then you have the Amish. The Amish actually come from the Mennonites. They split over shunning. The Mennonites do not shun, but the Amish do. So the Mennonites followed a leader named Menno Simmons. They became the Mennonites, and the Amish followed Jacob Amman and became the Amish. So Jacob Amman and his Amish clan left Switzerland. They moved to Germany. That's where the German influence comes in. And they lived peacefully in Germany for about 150 years, but once again, they began to be persecuted. Well, William Penn, who was the governor of Pennsylvania in the early 1700s, he was a Quaker, so he understood their religious convictions. So he welcomed them into Pennsylvania with the promise of religious freedom. So they all left Europe. The whole entire Amish clan, there's no Amish anywhere in Europe today. And they came to Pennsylvania and they settled in a little town at the time called Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So that's the founding Amish settlement in the United States. They eventually moved across the state of Pennsylvania. They moved to a town called West Mifflin, and they became the Big Valley Amish. Well, that Big Valley Amish, they split, and half of the Amish people came to Lawrence County. So they came here in 1840. This is the 10th oldest Amish settlement in the whole United States here in Lawrence County.
So why did they split whenever they came to Pennsylvania?
It's a matter of church. When there's often a split, it's because of church. So church rules, something half of the people might not agree on, half of the people might want to change, half might not, and that causes them to split. And that happens often, actually, in the Amish in the United States.
Does that mean that they would shun each other out of curiosity from?
It's not that they would shun each other, but they call it fellowshipping. So you're right, they would not fellowship. And actually, the Lawrence County Amish split at one time. It was in the early 1800s, and they split into groups. And if you've heard of Maple Grove Mennonite Church, that's in New Wilmington, that's what one of the Amish groups became. They became Mennonites and fellowshipped at that church. And then you have the Old Order Amish, which is what you see today.
Very cool. So you mentioned a couple of the different businesses that they went into or what they took up. With moving here, were they easily accepted into the community that already existed in Pennsylvania?
Well, the Amish actually came to Lawrence County before Lawrence County existed. They were here before Lawrence County became a county. And they came here in 1840, and I believe Lawrence County was established in 1845. So they were the first settlers here in Lawrence County. And they came here because of farming, agriculture. Beautiful place to farm, and that's what drew them here to Lawrence County.
Very cool. And so there weren't many other people to really give them any challenges moving here, it sounds like.
I asked my Amish friend, Neil Miller, I said, what were the challenges you had when you first came to Lawrence County? And he said the only thing he can think of or that he read about is because they were just a little group. There were 3 families, Amish families, that came here and formed the Lawrence County settlement. There weren't many people to marry. So they had to go to other Amish settlements. And he said the closest Amish settlement was Holmes County, Ohio. And he said there's a story of an Amish man that actually rode a horse to Holmes County, Ohio, to get a bishop and find a woman to marry. Yeah, so that was the early challenges.
So they started with 3 families, and how many do they have now?
There are 2,900 Amish in New Wilmington, so that's about 125 families that live here. This is the 4th largest Amish settlement in Pennsylvania, 13th largest settlement in the world.
And it started with 3.
It started with 3 families, 3 Byler families. Mm-hmm.
Goodness. What goods and services do they provide to the county in specific?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Amish here in Lawrence County. 100 years ago, probably even 50 years ago, the Amish were primarily farmers, and they mostly dairy farmers. If you've heard of the New Wilmington Cheese House or the Cheese Factory, that was actually founded by Amish families. The Amish were dairy farmers. They needed somewhere to send their milk, so they formed a co-op, and they started the cheese factory and turned their milk into cheese. And then eventually it became very difficult for them to farm. So corporate farms, kind of like the government, sort of put small farmers out of business. So less and less big farms, less and less dairy farms, and now more small businesses today. So primarily today, my Amish friend Neil that I talked to said, Susan, 25 years ago, 80% of all Amish were farmers. They made a living farming. Now it's less than 10%. That's a big, giant change amongst the Amish. So now it's more carpentry work, small business ownership, furniture making, more lumber, sawmills, anything working with wood. So that has been a big change amongst the Amish in our community. And back then, Neil said when they were all farmers, they didn't really need the English community very much. They were very accepted. One of the questions I asked them is what makes you love Lawrence County? Why do you like living here in Lawrence County? And Neil immediately said the biggest reason is because we're so respected here. The English is what they call us, anyone that's not Amish. He said we find the English being so accepting and kind and good to us, and it makes us want to stay here and do business here. So the kind of businesses that are most popular here, definitely carpentry work, produce growing for us, greenhouse growing, pumpkin farming's become a huge business amongst the Amish here in Pennsylvania. What vegetable can you think of people pay $10 to $15 for and not even eat it? Pumpkins. The Amish think we're a little crazy, and we are. But pumpkin farming's becoming a huge business. They're making pretty good money selling pumpkins in this area.
How would people learn more about the Amish?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question because the Amish they are pretty much not a closed off community, but I could not get an Amish here to come and talk about being Amish. They don't really want, I don't want to say this the wrong way. They do not really, not that they don't want people to be educated about the Amish, but they kind of keep to themselves. They're separatists. And so someone like me, I've built a bridge between the two communities. So the value that people get from taking my tour is truly learning about the Amish because there's so many misconceptions about them. People read those Amish romance novels and they see TV shows, reality TV shows that aren't real, like Breaking Amish and Amish Mafia. And so they get such a wrong picture of the Amish. So I think the value of my tour by far is teaching people the truth about the Amish. Like, for example, 90% of people on my tour think the Amish don't pay taxes. 90% of people. That's the number one misconception people have. But they pay every tax that we do, including public school tax. They send their children to private schools and they pay their own private school tax, but they also pay public school tax. There's one tax they don't pay, and that's Social Security. But the Amish don't believe in collecting anything from the government. No welfare, disability, Medicare, Social Security. They really do take care of themselves and each other.
That's really cool. I definitely was talking about this with a friend the other day.
Yeah.
They assume that they don't pay
Everybody
taxes.
does. And the second one is they think they abuse their animals at their puppy mills, and there are none here. I tell people all the time, their horses cost $6,000. Some of them are $13,000. Their buggies are $6,000. Do you really think they're going to mistreat those horses? That's their livelihood. They don't. That's just a misconception people have.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah.
First off, I'm really enjoying this conversation because I'm learning a lot from
Oh,
it.
good. You need to come on my tour.
I do need to come on your tour. I keep saying that.
Uh-huh.
I just need to just do it. In fact,
I'll tell you some of the things, this might not be your question, but the Amish, one of the things they're very worried about is Lawrence County is becoming more, let's say, busier. The cities are becoming closer to Lawrence County, and that's worrying the Amish. Pittsburgh to Cranberry to Shenango Township, that scares them. They are afraid. They don't want a lot of business, booming here because then they're afraid land prices will go up for them. People are coming from the city paying more for land prices. That's causing them to have to pay more for land prices. Less farming, so less land available. So they're really afraid of that. And they're very afraid of technology coming into their world. These Amish in New Wilmington, they're old order Amish, and they're actually the second strictest Amish groups in the world. So these Amish don't have computers. They don't have cell phones. And so they're very afraid of their young people getting a cell phone. At the dollar store, they sell those Cricket or Sprint phones. And that's something that really terrifies them, that their young people are being exposed to the world and being exposed to sinfulness. And that's something that really scares them. They really want to keep that away from their young people. So they're afraid of too much of the world coming into their world. So they do try to keep themselves somewhat separate, so there's not a lot of worldly influence for them.
So tell me, so I was a travel agent
Mm-hmm.
before what I do now. And the most interesting thing that I found was one day I did have an Amish family come in and plan a vacation.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Where do they typically go on vacation?
Yeah, we actually went on vacation with several Amish families. The vacation we took them, they asked us if we wanted to take them to Maine. They wanted to go whale watching. They wanted to take a ride on a cog railway that goes way up a mountain, a train, and they wanted to go to Acadia National Park. That was their 3 requests. Other than that, they let us choose what to do. But they love seeing nature. They love seeing mountains and oceans and forests. They love the United States and going up to Niagara Falls, anything that has to do with nature. The Amish love, and they do vacation. They do, they're allowed to drive in a car or a bus or a train, not an airplane. They can't fly or a helicopter, but they do travel in a car or a van or a train to see other parts of the United States.
And what do you think, like, what makes Lawrence County special to them?
Mm-hmm. Well, Lawrence County, without a doubt, is such an incredible place for agriculture, for them growing. They can grow so many different fruits and vegetables here, which enable them to provide food for their family and then to sell, to make a living, selling their agriculture. So they love Lawrence County for the agriculture. The prices are low compared to Lancaster. Lancaster is becoming overpopulated with Amish, and they're having a hard time finding land and having farms. So the Amish love here that Lawrence County still has a lot of land for them to expand and buy a farm. That's really important to them. As I said earlier, they love the way they're treated here. They feel very respected, and they feel that we are very kind to them and loving towards them. So they appreciate that very much.
That's awesome. Do you have any questions?
No, you're spot on. I mean, this is great.
Okay, good.
Do they have enough resources right now, or do you think that they wish they had more of anything?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, let me think about that. Do they have enough resources? Do the Amish have enough resources in Lawrence County? They do. In our culture, we are so conditioned to define success as making money, expanding, growing, becoming richer. The Amish are so opposite of that. That's what's not important to the Amish, making money. So we have to think differently. We have to think like them. They value God, family, community. That's what's most important to them. So they don't want to expand. They don't want their businesses to grow bigger. They want to be able to live their life by taking care of their elderly, by having their families next door to them. So that's what's most important to them, and that's what they value here, being able to do that. So I would say no, they're not running out of resources. They really value the nature, the beauty, the greenery here of Lawrence County. Like people come on my tour from all over the world, and they'll ask me questions like, what do the Amish think about being a zoo attraction? I'm like, oh, and Lawrence, they're not like that here at all. You're coming along as a friend to see them. They're not a zoo attraction, Yeah. And people are so respectful, not taking pictures. Like what I do, you'd think like people often will say to me, Susan, do they get mad when you bring people? Because I go 4 and 5 times a day, the same tour route. And I say, and it's the truth, they are so appreciative of what I do because I'm very respectful to them. Yeah. And plus I bring them a lot of business, people shopping at their little shops. So we really have learned to exist together.
And I think you're also providing that service of educating people.
Yeah, and they appreciate that. People
don't know what doesn't exist until somebody says, and somebody educates them that they're not originally from Germany. Mm-hmm. A lot of people automatically assume that that's where they're from.
All the time.
But I think that was really very interesting to learn that they're not from there.
Yeah.
And that there was 4 different divides.
Oh, yeah. And you want to hear another fun fact? So the Amish, William Penn invited the Amish into Pennsylvania, right? And he later regretted his decision. Can you guess why? Because the Amish are pacifist. And right when they came over, the French and Indian War started, and the Amish wouldn't fight. So guess who he called to come to Pennsylvania? The Germans. That's why Pennsylvania has so many Germans here. The Germans were willing to fight in the French and Indian War, so that's why Pennsylvania has such a German heritage. Isn't that amazing?
That is really
interesting.
I
think that was a neat. I thought that was a neat fact. Yeah.